My suitcase-sized gift bag was still in my hand when Daniel stepped into the doorway and blocked me from entering. Behind him, I could hear children shouting over music, the quick burst of laughter that comes when somebody starts a game too early, and the scrape of chairs moving across the kitchen floor. Blue and silver balloons floated near the ceiling. Cars filled both sides of the street. I was at the right house, on the right afternoon, for Ethan's 9th birthday. Daniel looked at the wrapped box under my arm, then at me. "Dad, go home." I thought I had misheard him. "What?" His voice dropped lower. "This is for family only." For a second, I just stood there. My son was 39 years old, but in that doorway I could still see flashes of the boy who used to wait for me after school, backpack hanging from one shoulder, asking if we could stop for fries on the way home. Then the image was gone. "Daniel," I said, keeping my voice even, "I'm here for Ethan. I know why you're here." "Then I don't understand." His jaw tightened. "Please don't make this difficult." Through the narrow space beside his shoulder, I saw Ethan dart past the hallway with 2 boys from his class. He was wearing a paper birthday crown crooked over his hair. He never looked toward the door. I lowered my voice even further. "Does Ethan know I'm here?" Daniel glanced back into the house, then returned his eyes to me. "This isn't the time." That was not an answer. I could have pushed the question. I could have raised my voice enough for everyone inside to hear. For 32 years as a high school principal, I had stood in rooms where people tried to win by becoming louder than everyone else. I had learned that volume rarely made the truth clearer. So I looked at my son and asked, "What exactly do you think I'm going to do?" He exhaled sharply. "After everything that's happened, I'm not doing this today." Everything that's happened. The phrase stopped me more effectively than his body in the doorway. I had no idea what he meant. I set Ethan's present beside the door, careful not to crush the corner of the wrapping paper. "Make sure he gets this." Daniel said nothing. I walked back, toward my car. As I reached the sidewalk, I glanced once at the front window. My sister Linda was standing inside with a paper cup in her hand. Beside her were 2 other relatives. They had seen me. What struck me was not anger on their faces. It was surprise. The kind of surprise people show when someone arrives who was never expected to come. I got into my car and closed the door. For the first time, I wondered what Daniel had been telling everyone about me. I drove home without calling Daniel back. For most of the drive, I kept hearing the same 5 words. "This is for family only." My wife, Margaret, had been gone 4 years. After she died, Ethan became one of the steady points in my week. I never tried to replace anyone in his life. I was simply Grandpa. Some Saturdays that meant the library and grilled cheese afterward. Once it meant spending nearly an hour at the Science Museum while Ethan explained an exhibit to me as if he had personally designed it. The previous spring, we had repaired his bicycle together, though together mostly meant I held things while he asked whether every tool in my garage had existed before electricity. Those memories made Daniel's accusation harder to understand. When I reached home, I put my keys on the kitchen counter and checked my phone. There was the baseball game Daniel had canceled because Ethan supposedly had a school project. There was the Science Museum afternoon Daniel had postponed because the family schedule had become too crowded. There was a dinner Daniel said needed to be moved to another weekend. None of those messages had seemed suspicious when I received them. Daniel and Claire both worked. They had a 9-year-old. Plans changed. I had spent enough years around families to know that a canceled Saturday was usually just a canceled Saturday. My phone buzzed. It was Linda. I stared at her name before opening the message. "I thought you weren't coming. Daniel said you didn't want to." I read it twice. Then I typed, "Who told you that?" Her answer came almost immediately. "Daniel. I thought you knew. He's been saying you need space and keep turning down invitations. I figured you had your reasons." I sat down at the kitchen table. The room suddenly felt very quiet. I scrolled back through Daniel's messages again, slower this time. Canceled. Postponed. Maybe next weekend. Not a good night. I had accepted every explanation because I had believed I was making life easier for my son. Linda sent another message. "He said you haven't really been interested in family things lately." That one hurt differently. Not because Linda believed it. She had been given an explanation, and until today she had no reason to question it. What bothered me was how neatly it explained my absence. Daniel had not simply kept me outside one birthday party. Someone had apparently been explaining, event by event, why I was missing. Another message appeared. "Did you really decline Ethan's school open house?" I stared at the screen. I knew Ethan had been working hard that semester. I knew he had made a model for one of his classes because he had described it to me over the phone, but no one had told me there was an open house. I typed carefully, "Linda, I was never invited." The 3 dots appeared beneath her name, vanished, then appeared again. For the first time since leaving Daniel's driveway, I stopped thinking about what he had said at the door. A worse question had taken its place. How many times had my family been told I had chosen not to show up? I stayed at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me and opened my calendar. For 32 years as a high school principal, I had learned to be careful whenever 2 people remembered the same event differently. Memory could be sincere and still be wrong. Before deciding who had done what, I usually started with the least dramatic things available: dates, messages, schedules, and what each person had actually been told. I wasn't investigating my son. At least, that wasn't how I thought of it. I wanted to know whether I had misunderstood something. I started with the family dinner Linda remembered. Daniel had told me it needed to be postponed. According to Linda, everyone else had eaten together that night. Then I checked the school open house. There was nothing because I had never received an invitation. The baseball game was clearer. Daniel's message said Ethan needed the weekend for a school project, so our outing was off. I sent Linda the date and asked only what she remembered. Her reply came a few minutes later. "Daniel told Ethan you were busy." I leaned back in my chair. 3 events. 3 different explanations. To me, plans had been canceled or never mentioned. To everyone else, I had chosen not to participate. That didn't tell me why Daniel was doing it. It didn't even tell me when it had started. But it was enough to make one thing painfully clear. Some of the distance between Ethan and me had not happened by accident. I called Daniel. He answered after several rings. "What? I want to understand something." A pause. "What now?" I kept my voice calm. "The family dinner. You told me it was postponed. Linda says it happened." Silence. "And Ethan's open house," I continued. "Claire apparently expected me to know about it. I didn't." His breathing changed. "Are you comparing notes with Linda now?" "I'm asking you. You always do this." "Do what?" "Keep records. Dates. Messages. Like everyone's one of your students and you're waiting to catch them doing something wrong." I looked down at the phone. "This isn't about catching you." "Sure. If you didn't want me at those events, you could have told me. You don't understand what it's like having you around. Then explain it." Another pause. "You judge everything," he said. "How we raise Ethan. How we organize things. Every decision turns into something you would have handled better." There was anger in his voice, but underneath it I heard something older. I didn't dismiss it. "If I've made you feel that way, we should talk about that." "No, we shouldn't. That's the point. Things have been easier without the tension." I let that sit for a moment. "You're allowed to be angry with me, Daniel. But why tell people I'm the one refusing to come?" He didn't answer. "Why tell Ethan I was busy when you canceled the baseball game?" His voice hardened. "Because sometimes it's easier than explaining all this." "All what?" "Our relationship." I closed my eyes. There were still things I didn't know, and I wasn't going to pretend 3 contradictions explained. An entire year between a father and son. But one question mattered more than the rest. "What have you told Ethan about me?" Daniel gave a tired laugh. "Dad, stop. What does he think when I don't show up? You're making this bigger than it is. Does he think I chose not to come?" Daniel was quiet for several seconds. Then he said, "He's already gotten used to you not showing up." The words landed harder than what he had said at the birthday door. Until then, I had wanted to understand what Daniel had been telling the family about me. Now I wanted to know what my grandson had been taught to believe. For a while after Daniel hung up, I sat there staring at the 3 dates I had written down. I could handle being misunderstood by adults. What I couldn't handle was Ethan believing I had simply stopped choosing him. The next morning, Linda called. "Your present is at my house," she said. I straightened in my chair. "What?" It was still outside Daniel's door when the rain started last night. I couldn't leave it there, so I brought it home. I closed my eyes briefly. "Thank you." When Linda arrived later, she carried the package exactly as I had left it. One corner of the wrapping paper was slightly damp, but otherwise it was untouched. I looked at it for a long moment. "That belongs to Ethan," I said. "I know." I carefully opened only the outer wrapping. Inside was the actual present, still boxed, and the birthday card I had prepared for him. There were also 3 small things I had tucked beside it. An unused museum ticket from the afternoon Daniel had postponed. A baseball ticket stub I had saved beside a handwritten note about the replacement outing Ethan and I were supposed to take. And a little printed voucher I had made for one of our library and lunch Saturdays. Ethan liked receiving homemade vouchers because he treated them like official contracts and always insisted I sign them. Linda picked up the baseball stub. Wait. I looked at her. What date was this? I told her. Her expression changed. Daniel told me you canceled that. He told me Ethan needed the weekend for a school project. Linda put the stub down. I opened Daniel's message on my phone and handed it to her. She read it without speaking. For the first time, someone besides me was looking at both versions at once. This is what he sent you? Yes. And then he told us you were busy? Yes. Linda reached for her phone. What are you doing? Sending this to the family group? No. She looked at me as if she hadn't heard correctly. Robert, everyone thinks you've been refusing invitations. I know. Then show them. I took my phone back. Not like this. Why not? Because yesterday was Ethan's birthday. I'm not turning his birthday into evidence in a fight between his father and grandfather. Linda folded her arms. Daniel already made it a fight. That doesn't mean I have to make it bigger. I had contradictions. I had messages. Now Linda had seen one of them herself. But I still didn't know why Daniel had let this go so far. I didn't know what Claire believed. I didn't know exactly what Ethan had been told. And if I threw everything into the family group chat now, Daniel would stop explaining and start defending. Maybe I could clear my name quickly. I wasn't sure what it would cost Ethan. Linda sat across from me. There is something else, she said. The hesitation in her voice made me look up. A couple of weeks ago, Ethan asked me something. What? He asked why you don't come around much anymore. My hand tightened around the edge of the birthday card. Linda continued quietly. He asked if you didn't like coming anymore. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The museum ticket, the baseball stub, and the little library voucher were spread across the table between us. Until then, they had been reminders of plans that never happened. Now they looked like something else. A record of all the times my grandson might have been waiting for me while believing I had chosen to stay away. That question changed what mattered. Until Linda said it, part of me had still been thinking like a man whose reputation had been damaged. I wanted to understand why Daniel had lied about the invitations and why the rest of the family had been allowed to believe I was withdrawing from them. But Ethan was 9. He wasn't weighing two versions of a family dispute. He was seeing empty chairs and canceled afternoons and deciding his grandfather no longer wanted to be there. I wasn't going to call him behind Daniel's back and make him choose which adult to believe. Linda understood that. Instead, she called Claire. I wasn't part of their first conversation. Linda told me afterward that Claire had defended Daniel immediately. She believed I had been turning down invitations too. So Linda didn't accuse him. She asked about dates. The family dinner. The baseball game. Then Ethan's school open house. That was where Claire stopped. She checked her messages. Later that afternoon, Claire called me herself. Robert, I need to ask you something. Her voice was careful. Did Daniel invite you to Ethan's open house? No, are you sure? I didn't know there was one until Linda mentioned it yesterday. Silence. I asked him to invite you, she said. He told me you couldn't make it. I looked at the birthday card still lying on my table. He never contacted me. Claire didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. Linda showed me the baseball message. I wish she hadn't needed to. I thought you were the one pulling away. So did everyone else, apparently. Claire sighed. I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide anything because of one phone call. Check what you can check. That evening Daniel called. You're turning everyone against me. No, Linda is calling Claire. Claire is questioning me. What exactly do you call that? I call it people comparing what they were told. You see? That's what you do. You make everything a case. I let him finish. Then I said, Daniel, I know I haven't always made things easy. He went quiet. There were times you wanted me to listen and I gave you advice instead. I commented on Ethan's bedtime. I questioned Miss Schoolwork. Sometimes I probably sounded more like a principal than your father. So now you admit it. I admit I can be critical. I don't admit telling Ethan I didn't want to see him. He said nothing. I don't want a family audience, I continued. Meet me privately. Tell me what you needed from me that you weren't getting. I'll listen. No, Daniel, no. You've already decided you're right. I've decided the messages say what they say. He hung up. A few minutes later, my phone began buzzing repeatedly. The family group chat. Daniel had posted a long message. I read only the first few lines before understanding what he was doing. He said I was dragging old messages into Ethan's birthday because I couldn't respect boundaries. He said I was trying to punish him by forcing relatives to take sides. I didn't respond. Then Linda sent me a private message. Robert, there's one more thing you need to know. I waited. Her next message appeared. Ethan asked me recently why Grandpa doesn't like coming anymore. Daniel's message changed the argument because it gave everyone something concrete to react to. Until then, most of the family had been dealing with fragments. Daniel had his version. I had mine. Linda had begun noticing contradictions, and Claire had found one herself. Now Daniel was telling everyone that the real problem was me. Some relatives responded cautiously. One said family disagreements shouldn't be handled in a group chat. Another said Daniel had a right to set boundaries in his own home. I couldn't disagree with that. Then Daniel started listing examples. He reminded everyone that I had questioned Ethan's bedtime once. He mentioned the time I asked why Ethan had missed schoolwork. He brought up several occasions when I had criticized Daniel for canceling commitments. Those things had happened. Reading them was uncomfortable because, stripped of context, they made me sound exactly like the man Daniel had described. A retired principal who couldn't stop evaluating his own family. I put my phone down. Maybe that was the part one had missed for too long. Daniel hadn't invented the feeling that I judged him. What he had done was turn that feeling into something else. I don't want Dad correcting me had somehow become Dad doesn't want to come. Those were not the same statement. My phone rang. Daniel. I answered. I meant what I said, he told me. Stop involving everyone. I haven't posted anything. You gave Linda messages. She asked what happened. And now Claire thinks I'm lying. I waited. Are you? He didn't answer that. Instead, he said, I don't want you contacting Ethan for a while. For the first time since the birthday, I felt my temper rise. You're keeping me from my grandson because people asked you questions? I'm protecting my family from this. I almost laughed at the phrase, but there was nothing funny about it. I had enough on my phone to make Daniel look very bad. I could have posted every cancellation, every date, every contradiction. I could have answered his accusations line by line. For 30 seconds, I wanted to. Then I pictured Ethan hearing that his father and grandfather were fighting over who loved him more. No, I said. Daniel hesitated. No what? I'm not putting our private messages in the group chat. That seemed to surprise him. But I'm also not agreeing with what you've told people. If someone asks me a direct question, I'll answer it truthfully. You always have to be right. This isn't about being right anymore. I ended the call before anger made me say something I would regret. The silence afterward cost more than I expected. Daniel's version remained in the group chat. Several relatives didn't know what to believe. And now I had no idea when I would see Ethan again. That evening, Claire called. I checked more of the dates, she said quietly. I waited. I don't believe you were choosing to stay away. It was the first clear acknowledgement I had heard from inside Daniel's own home. Thank you for checking. There's something else. Her voice tightened. I found Ethan's birthday present. I sat forward. The one you left at the door? Yes. And it was never opened. I looked at the empty place on my table where the card and keepsakes had been. Claire took a breath. Robert, Daniel told Ethan you didn't bring him anything. For several seconds, I couldn't answer. The unopened present was no longer just a package Daniel had forgotten beside the door. Claire had found it, and Daniel had still allowed Ethan to believe I had arrived at his birthday with nothing. What exactly did he tell him? I asked. Claire hesitated. That you didn't bring a present because you weren't staying. I closed my eyes. Claire, the card was with it. I know. And the museum ticket. The baseball stub. I saw them. The next day, Linda called me after speaking with Claire. Daniel had taken the package back from her, but instead of giving it to Ethan, he had put it away. He says giving it to Ethan now would confuse things, Linda told me. I almost asked how the truth could possibly be more confusing than the lie. Instead, I said nothing. Daniel had what he wanted, at least for the moment. I wasn't visiting Ethan. Several relatives were still unsure whether I was a wounded grandfather or an overbearing father refusing to respect his son's boundaries. And Ethan still didn't know I had stood outside his house holding his birthday present. My decision not to fight publicly had protected him from one kind of conflict. It had not protected him from believing I had forgotten him. That afternoon, Linda called again. Her voice was different this time. Ethan just called me. My stomach tightened. What happened? He asked whether you forgot his birthday. I stood at my kitchen window, looking out at nothing. What did you tell him? That the adults needed to sort something out. Good. It wasn't a satisfying answer, but it was the right one. Ethan didn't need Linda recruiting him to my side either. Later, Claire called. She had heard about Ethan's question. I can't keep doing this, she said. She had found the birthday card where Daniel had put it. It was dated, written before the party, and mentioned the outings Ethan and I had planned. Beside it were the keepsakes. Claire already had her own message asking Daniel to invite me to the open house. Linda remembered what Daniel had told her about the baseball game. My phone still held Daniel's cancellations. None of those things alone explained everything. Together, they established a pattern Daniel could no longer dismiss as misunderstanding. Claire confronted him privately. She later told me she gave him a simple choice. Tell Ethan the truth himself. Tell him Grandpa had come to the birthday. Tell him there had been a present. Tell him that some of the missed visits had not been my decision. Daniel refused. He said, admitting that would make him look like the villain. Claire told him this wasn't about villains. It was about what their son believed. Daniel still wouldn't do it. That was the moment Claire stopped treating the problem as a disagreement between her husband and his father. A child was now carrying a false story because the adults around him had allowed it to survive. A few days later, Claire called me again. There's a family dinner next weekend, she said. I almost smiled at the irony. I think I've had enough family gatherings for a while. I understand. Then she paused. But I want you there. I didn't answer immediately. Daniel knows? Yes. And he wants me there? No, Claire's voice remained steady. But this time, Robert, the invitation is coming directly from me. I almost declined Claire's invitation. Not because I was afraid of Daniel. I simply had no interest in walking into another room where my presence itself had become an argument. But this dinner was different from Ethan's birthday. Ethan would not be sitting in the middle of the conversation, and Claire had asked me directly to come. So I went. Linda was already there when I arrived. A few other relatives were gathered in the living room. Their greetings were polite but uneven. Some hugged me. Others watched me with the cautious expression people use when they know there are two versions of a story and aren't sure which one they're standing inside. Daniel came out of the kitchen. The moment he saw me, his face tightened. What are you doing here? Claire invited me. He looked toward her. Claire didn't move. I did. Daniel shook his head. Unbelievable. I could feel the room becoming quiet. This is exactly what I've been talking about, he said. I set one boundary, and nobody respects it. I picked up my coat again. Then I'll leave. No, Claire said. I stopped. She looked at Daniel. I need you to answer one question. When I asked you to invite Robert to Ethan's open house, did you invite him? Daniel stared at her. We've already discussed this. That isn't an answer. He glanced around the room. This is ridiculous. Linda spoke from behind me. What about the baseball game? Daniel's expression hardened. You too. You told me Robert canceled. He did cancel things. Not that one. Daniel turned toward me. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Everybody's standing around interrogating me. No, I said. I wanted you to talk to me privately. Twice. His face reddened. You've criticized my parenting for years. Yes. That answer stopped him. I continued before he could speak. I've given advice when you didn't ask for it. I've questioned decisions that were yours to make. Sometimes I treated being your father too much like being your principal. If you wanted distance from me because of that, you had the right to say so. Daniel looked almost uncertain. But that's not what you told Ethan. The room went still again. I kept my voice level. You were allowed to tell me not to come. You were allowed to tell me you needed space. You were even allowed to tell me I wasn't welcome in your house. What you weren't allowed to do was tell my grandson I chose not to be there when you were the one keeping me away. Claire left the room briefly and returned holding Ethan's birthday card. Still unopened. She placed it on the table. Daniel stared at it. You told Ethan his grandfather didn't bring him anything, she said. Robert came to the house with this. Daniel looked at the card, then at the people around him. Claire continued. You told me Robert couldn't attend the open house. He was never invited. You told Linda he canceled the baseball outing. Your message to Robert says you canceled it. Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly. For once, he didn't argue about the dates. I was tired of feeling like I couldn't do anything right, he said. No one interrupted him. Every time Dad came over, I felt like I was being evaluated. Ethan's bedtime, school, plans, everything. I listened. So I stopped inviting him sometimes, Daniel continued. Then people asked where he was. His eyes stayed on the table. It was easier to say he couldn't come. Claire's voice softened, but not enough to remove the question. And then, Daniel swallowed. Then I'd already said it. So the next time, I said the same thing. There it was. Not one enormous scheme. One Lie protecting another until my grandson believed I had stopped showing up because I no longer cared. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Daniel finally looked at me. What do you want? I want you to tell Ethan the truth. That's it. No. Trust between you and me is going to take longer. But Ethan doesn't wait for us to fix ourselves. He's 9. Claire nodded. You can decide what relationship you want with your father, she told Daniel. But Ethan doesn't get used to cover that decision. Daniel looked around the room. The relatives who had once believed I was withdrawing weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at him. I buttoned my coat again. This time nobody stopped me. Before I reached the door, Daniel spoke. Dad. I turned. He didn't apologize. Not yet. But the anger had gone out of his face. I'll talk to Ethan. I nodded. Good. Then I left him to do it. For months, Daniel had spoken for me whenever I wasn't in the room. This was one conversation I wanted him to have in his own voice. Daniel did talk to Ethan. I didn't ask for every word of the conversation. I didn't need a transcript, and Ethan didn't need another adult checking whether his father had apologized correctly. A few days later, Daniel called me. I told him you came to his birthday, he said. I waited. I told him the present was there, and that some of the times he thought you were busy, I was the one who canceled. How did he take it? He asked why. That was the hardest question because there was no answer a 9-year-old needed to carry. What did you tell him? That I was angry with you and handled it badly. I nodded even though Daniel couldn't see me. That sounds fair. Things did not return to normal after that. For a while, Daniel and I kept our contact limited. Invitations came directly instead of passing through assumptions. If plans changed, someone actually told me why. Ethan stopped being used as a messenger between adults. I changed some things too. The next time Daniel mentioned a problem at work, I felt the old instinct to explain exactly what I thought he should do. Instead, I asked, do you want my advice, or do you want me to listen? There was a long silence. Then Daniel laughed once. Listen. So I did. That didn't erase what had happened. Months later, Daniel finally apologized without defending himself first. We were sitting alone when he said, I shouldn't have told Ethan you didn't want to come. No, I said. You shouldn't have. I kept telling myself I was setting boundaries. You were allowed to set them. I know. He looked down at his hands. I wasn't allowed to make you the reason for them. That was the apology I had been waiting for. Not because it made him smaller, but because it finally named what had happened. I accept that, I said. I didn't tell him everything was forgotten. It wasn't. Trust returned in smaller pieces. A Saturday at the library. Lunch with Ethan. A family dinner where nobody needed to explain why I was there. Nearly a year after the birthday that started all of it, I drove back to Daniel and Claire's house for Ethan's next birthday. There were cars along both sides of the street again. Children's voices came through the walls. I carried a smaller wrapped present this time. As I walked toward the front door, I remembered standing in the same place the year before with Daniel blocking the entrance. Dad, go home. This is for family only. I reached the porch. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Ethan had apparently seen me through the window. Grandpa, you're here. He ran toward me, and I barely had time to move the present before he wrapped his arms around my waist. I told you I'd be here. I know. Daniel appeared behind him. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then he stepped aside. The doorway was open. No explanation. No speech. No promise that everything between us had been repaired. It hadn't. But Ethan was holding my hand, pulling me toward the noise inside, and Daniel was no longer standing between us. So I walked through the door.